So you are a combat sports athlete looking to develop some strength, but your time to invest is very limited. You cannot do a typical bro split like upper body day or lower body day. You cannot spend 3 hours per session 5 times per week. And what if I told you that you absolutely do not have to do that? What if I told you that all you need is 30 or 40 minutes 2 times per week to develop some very decent strength? It is completely possible. Theoretically, you can even develop some basic levels of strength with 1 session per week. If the intensity is high enough, that is completely possible. So let us go through some basic principles if you want to strength train on limited time as a combat sports athlete. First of all, do not train like a powerlifter or a weightlifter. Although you might use powerlifting movements, you are not a powerlifter. You are training for your own sport, which is wrestling, MMA or boxing, whatever the case might be. If you use the same volume and intensity as a powerlifter would, you will be burned out by the time it is time for your sports session. So technically you're almost training for 2 sports. A powerlifter has the privilege of only training for their own sport, so their recoverability is much better. If you are always exhausted and sore after a strength and power session, it is probably too much and you are doing something wrong. You should develop strength in a way that leaves you fresh for the combat sports session. If you are progressively overloading every time with baby weights that you do not even notice a difference every time you go in there, and in spite of that you keep getting stronger, this is a sign of a good strength and power intervention for combat sports. Before we go into the volume and intensity, here is what you need. Begin with some kind of explosive exercise, whether that is Olympic weightlifting, ballistic training or plyometrics, and then think in terms of movement patterns. You need pressing, pulling, squatting and deadlifting. That's basically it. You can go down even deeper, you can categorize them into vertical pulling or horizontal pulling, all of that stuff. But this is the whole skeleton of it all. If you have these and you vary them at reasonable times, you are very good to go. I don't care if you prefer to do the bench press over the dips or vice versa. I don't care if you do a bent over row or a dumbbell row. As long as you have some form of progressive overloading and you're targeting these fundamental movement patterns, you're good to go. Now, when speaking of volume, a powerlifter might use 5 sets of 5 reps or 3 sets of 5 reps. For you as a combat sports athlete, sometimes 1 or 2 sets is enough. I kid you not, you can develop some very impressive levels of strength with just 1 to 2 sets per exercise. I really don't understand where this tradition of always staying above 3 sets comes from. Even in powerlifting or bodybuilding context, it is not always the case. On a very general basis, here is the only principle you need on this question. The higher the intensity is, the shorter the time of the session can be. What do I mean by intensity? I mean that if you want to do 1 repetition per set, let's say 2 sets, that 1 repetition has to be very intense and very heavy. If you want to do 2 sets of 10 reps, the 10 reps also have to be very intense and very heavy. It is never about the rep range in and of itself, it is about the rep range in conjunction with the intensity. They work hand to hand. So I'm not gonna stand here and advocate high reps or low reps. It depends on your preference, what you respond best to, and above all, your enthusiasm. What do you have fun doing? Enthusiasm is very important in any training intervention. I am willing to bet that you have heard of the Pareto principle. It states that 80% of the output comes from 20% of the input. This means that many things that we do in life, studying for an exam, relationship, economics, work, is filled with fluff, with noise. So our task is to disregard all of this noise and fluff that only accounts for peanuts and only target the things that give us the highest return on investment. And this is very evident in the strength training world as well. In the summer programs, there is just way too many exercises that add up to junk volume. Now watch every single strength training textbook, every single strength training guru, and they will probably say that compound lifts offers the highest bang for the buck, that they target multiple muscles simultaneously and they target fundamental movement patterns. Now my question is, if these are so valuable, if these are so highly praised, why do so many people add so much junk exercises in their program? If you can get 80% of the effect from this alone, why are you wasting so much time on other things? So my point is, cut down on the accessory lifts a little bit and focus on the big compound exercises now that your time is limited. If you have time, feel free to add wrist exercises, feel free to target the glutes, feel free to target your lats and all kinds of individual muscle groups, but for you as a combat sports athlete, I guarantee you that you don't have this privilege. Let me tell you something, everyone can be a professor when it comes to analyzing the demands of a sport. I can take a boxer and I can take, okay, they need hip rotational power, they need leg strength, they need wrist strength, they need chest strength, they need arm strength. But what is much more difficult to do than being a professor of analyzing a sport is actually making a feasible plan. What is feasibility? It means that it needs to be implementable. So if I give one of my boxers a spreadsheet with 20 exercises because I have analyzed the demands of boxing, they're gonna throw it in the trash can. I need to make it an implementable training program. Okay, do you understand where I'm getting at here? If we only have 40 minutes per session 2 times per week, we have to remove all of the fluff and all of the noise. And then we have rest periods between sets. Now you might read in a textbook that always advocates 5 minutes per set or 8 minutes per set to let your phosphagen stores regenerate completely. But here is some contextual factors that most people forget. This is under the context that you actually deplete all of your phosphagen stores, okay? Most people, they are not competent in maximal exertion, so they don't even deplete their phosphagen stores. So just resting for the sake of resting 5 minutes is not always worth it. Just rest enough. And then we have a supersetting on unrelated movement. For example, you do a bench press which is very agonist oriented, the chest muscles, okay, follow up with a bent over row which is antagonistic oriented. And you can do this for every other exercise. For example, a back squat, okay, follow up with a military press, or a pull-up, follow up with a Bulgarian split squat. It might not be as good as doing them on separate occasions, but guess what? You only have 2 sessions with 40 minutes per session. It is better than not doing them at all. You will still develop some very decent strength by this, and if it helps you to save time, then it is well worth it.